Welcome one, welcome all. The Millie Roundtable is back. It's week 11. We have 8 more shows together if you include week 18. So only 2 months left that you guys have to deal with us. But if you're watching, we thank you. And I'm joined by the two usuals. I got Snyder, I got Drew. Snyder, how's your day been? I know that we were on the Maryland second half cover against Michigan. That was very nice. And how's it going?
Yeah, we got there on that. That was fun. Some interesting college games today. Prayers up to Jordan Travis. Brutal injury for him. Hopefully, hopefully that's as good as possible, but it didn't look good. But yeah, excited to dive into the slate. We got some decent games this week. We had a couple of really good opportunities to stack up, I think. We got the Dolphins back on the slate, so that's fun. Excited to hear what you guys think heading into the slate as I just pulled it up.
Yeah, 100%. There's going to be some heavy chalk across the board. Drew, how's your weekend been? Did you play MMA or did you play golf? Anything like that this weekend?
Played golf the first 2 rounds of Showdown. I didn't play today, and I don't have anything in for tomorrow just yet. But I did play MMA. It was nice. It was actually done before the show, which is good. The last couple of weeks hasn't been much of a sweat, but you have to watch the last couple of fights. So no contest. It's been pretty brutal. So yeah, all aboard the NFL train at this point in the week. And it was the last PGA event until January pretty much. So We're NBA and NFL. That's it.
Tiger's going to be back. Did you see Tiger committed to the Hero?
I did. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. It's his event and it's not really an official event. They might let him have a cart. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a real small field for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. The Heroes Classic probably coming up here, and the RSM Classic going on right now. I know, Snyder, that you do the Showdown playbook, and I assume it's done, or it will be done very shortly for tomorrow. So that's perfect. Drew, glad to have you here, and we'll go ahead and dive into this 11-game slate. 8 of them are from 1 p.m. starts, and then we have 3 late ones. And I have to say, it's probably better to have a little bit of early action than it is later on. Just seeing these games late. Only 1 game is late I really have much interest in. That's the Seahawks and Rams. You have the Jets and Bills late. You have the 49ers, Tampa Bay Bucks. So it looks like the first 8 games are going to be the ones that target. And we'll go ahead and get started. And if you want to follow along, just follow along with the Saber Sim. We have the game tabs up. And the first one we're going to start out with is one that's going to carry a lot of ownership on one side of the ball. It is the Washington Commanders going against the New York Giants. So the Washington Commanders have a lot of chalk their way. The Commanders obviously trading away a few of their defensive pieces prior to the deadline. However, their defense at 3,600 going against Tommy DeVito, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league by far. They are projected for 20% ownership. Brian Robinson projected for around 19%. The big injury news here, of course, Antonio Gibson is doubtful, likely to miss out on this one. And Brian Robinson was the benefit of 6 targets last week, which he turned into 119 yards, I think, which was crazy. And a lot of other options here, Snyder. So what are you doing with the Washington side of the ball? I know you mentioned Sam Howell's been hitting a lot of your teams lately.
Yeah, I just kind of ran the Sims before this thing started, and Howell's popping. He was the most highest owned quarterback in the Sims. The 150, I just ran a base build to see what was kind of hitting before this started. I was kind of surprised to see him hitting at such a high rate, but I guess it makes sense here against this bad Giants team. They're a big favorite here. I don't think I'll play the defense, so I like other defenses. And 3,600, that's a little too expensive for this defense, so I'll be off of that. Probably will run some Howell teams. I usually like to pair Howell up with Dotson if I do play Howell. It looks like Dotson's coming off a down game last week, so definitely fully ready to go into Dotson this week. Off of 2 really good games and the down game, maybe he bounces back this game. Yet Curtis Samuel 3.6K as well. I know a lot of people generally go towards Terry McLaurin. He's 700 more. I'd probably just go to Dotson there as well. And then Brian Robinson, kind of his usage spiked last week. I think he's an interesting play this week, 5.8K. He will see, probably at least 25, maybe higher than that in some contests. I think he'll be a pretty chalky piece this week. But, I mean, he's in a great spot too. Big favorite here. And he had a lot of work in the passing game last week. He didn't see many rushes, but he had over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown last week. So that's interesting to take away.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of interesting pieces here. And I really want to know what you're going to be doing with Brian Robinson, Drew, because Obviously, he might be one of the highest owned running backs when it's all said and done. Once Antonio Gibson actually gets ruled out, he has been ruled out already. I know he's doubtful, but 6 targets last week, nothing to scoff at. Obviously, Josh Jacobs ran all over this team a couple weeks ago. The Giants yielded up plenty of offensive opportunities to the Cowboys too, which they took most of it through the air. Your play of the day last week was the Dak Prescott too. Are you going back to just attacking the Giants here, and what are you doing with Brian Robinson mostly?
Yeah, I have some exposure to the Washington side mainly. I'm underweight on Brian Robinson. I just overall this game I'm going to be pretty low on. For me, Sam Howell is not popping, or at least at the ownership, it's not worth me targeting. So as of now, I have 0% Sam Howell. My highest owned in this game is Curtis Samuel, ironically enough, and I don't think it's going to be much of. It obviously won't be any stacking. So yeah, it's just sprinkles. Curtis Samuel, Saquon Barkley, I think is a fine filler from the running back position at 7,100. But yeah, Brian Robinson, I think if he is going to be chalk, I'll be underweight. And Logan Thomas is the last guy that I'll kind of bring up here. And I'm right there with Snyder on the defense. I mean, Commanders is probably going to be a popular choice. I just don't see it at 3,600. This probably isn't the slate that I would spend up for a defense. We talk about that every week. It is a make or break spot, but it's really just a couple pieces, and they're all very low ownership for me. Again, Curtis Samuel, Barkley, a little bit of Robinson, and Logan Thomas to fill it in.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, Curtis Samuel being back too. I mean, this is it's not the greatest game environment. Obviously, the Giants only projected a 13-point team total. They like to run the ball. Obviously, Bieniemy has helped this offense out quite a bit from last year to this year too. With you guys, though, I don't want to full stack it. I mean, we're seeing ownership into the low teens for guys like McLaurin, Thomas, and Howell, which seems a bit high. I mean, this game could easily be, one guy doing all the work, or, just one floor piece. Like, it wouldn't surprise anyone if this ended at like 20-10 or something like that. I know the Washington team total is decent, but ultimately we don't have to fiddle around with it too much. And kind of
Samuel's just a price play for me. Like, it's not worth stacking. Like, the ceiling with him isn't really there. It's just like at 3,600, he's a nice punt if he's going to be the key piece.
Exactly. And then even sub 6K Brian Robinson, right? It's not like, you're not committing over 12K for McLaurin and Howell like you would have to. And even a guy like Dotson, you're committing almost 11K. You're getting these cheap pieces who can also benefit. So I'm with you guys. I think Snyder, I'm with you too on the Commanders defense. Obviously, Tommy DeVito's not the greatest quarterback in the world by any means. However, 3,600 for a defense is rich, and there's other defenses in good spots at much lower ownership. And, we talked about this early on, especially in the first few weeks and stuff. It's okay to eat chalk at defense, but, what are we really looking for from a Commanders team that has just given up big play after big play? It's not a good defense as it is already, and it's going to come in at heavy ownership at a high price tag. It's worth getting different elsewhere, in my opinion.
I will say one thing also about Curtis Samuel. I like that call from Drew there. It'll be good leverage too off of Rondale Moore at that same price point. I think Rondale Moore is going to be at least double-digit ownership, and Samuel should probably be 5 to 7% or something like that.
Yeah, I'll probably be 3x that. That's just kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we just saw what the Cowboys did through the air. And speaking of the Cowboys, we also get them going against the Carolina Panthers. And Rico Dowdle has been downgraded to questionable. And could this finally be Tony Pollard week, Snyder? It's been frustrating if you're a Tony Pollard fan. However, weeks and weeks of being chalk has now finally led us to him potentially being under 10% and one of the best spots for running backs in the game. I'm buying the Tony Pollard stock here, Snyder. Are you?
Yeah, I think it's finally time to jump in on Pollard. I haven't played him much this year at all, maybe a couple times earlier, but even like CD Lamb and the coaches are starting to speak like, we got to get Pollard in the end zone. We're going to get him more usage. Pollard actually has like the second most touches inside the 10-yard line in the NFL this year, just has not been able to get there. I think this week we see Pollard finally getting there, maybe finally hit that 20-plus point mark this week. So I'll be back on Pollard this week. I actually think Carolina could make this Dallas team play a little tougher here. I mean, we've seen Dallas kind of struggle outside and on the road. Maybe this is kind of like a sleepy spot where they had against the Cardinals earlier this year. And then Dallas plays on Thanksgiving on Thursday. I could see them kind of falling asleep here. The spread's at 10, kind of holding strong there. Interesting on how popular Brandon Cooks will be this week. Also, he scored a touchdown now in 3 or 4 games. He had that big game last week, 9 for 173 and 1, put up 35. I think he's interesting if you want to go there. I mean, the Dak, CD, and Cook stack has been cooking the last few weeks, so I wouldn't hesitate you going that way. I think I'm gonna more beyond the running attack here with Tony Pollard. I think he's in a good spot here to finally break out. And I know people are gonna be hesitant to push the button. I'd be surprised if his ownership got up to 20%. I think it'll be under that, probably right around the 15% range, 15 to 17 or something like that.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's actually surprising to see the third highest projected player in this game is a defense. And it's not the one that you would think. It's the Panthers defense as a punt. But obviously, Drew, you've been on the Cowboys for back-to-back weeks. You were on CeeDee Lamb. You're on Dak Prescott last week. I mean, they absolutely nuked back-to-back times in a row. What are you doing here with this Cowboys team in a great spot at kind of low ownership? Are you kind of going back to them for a third straight time?
Not as heavy. No, it's a little bit tough on the pricing this week for Dallas. CeeDee Lamb at 9,200, stacking him with Dak over 7K. It's tough, but Pollard is probably the key piece. I mean, 6,600 for him on this offense. Like a little bit of its variance. Like honestly, like some of the Lamb TD equity that he's had over the last couple of weeks has been taken from Pollard in the red zone. And that could easily shift. And I think that's where people are going this week. And it's obviously a good price play anyways at 6,600. So yeah, I'm with you guys on Pollard. This will probably be the week that I'll buy in quite a bit heavier. And like I said, man, a lot of it's been variance. Like guys have been playing the Dallas Cowboys getting 45 points and Pollard busting under 10 points and CeeDee Lamb goes for 40. And it could easily switch the other way. And, Pollard's got 2 games back-to-back over 20 and CeeDee Lamb's in the 20s. Like it could easily even out. And I think it can actually switch over to Pollard this week. So I'm heavy on Pollard. I do like another cheap guy here, DJ Chark from Carolina at 3,300. Outside of that, I'm not super bought into paying up for Dallas in this spot here. I think, honestly, there's a lot of sprinkles. Like I have a few stacks of Dallas, but it's not going to be heavy as it was the last couple of weeks. So I'll pretty much leave it there. I think I got a little bit of CeeDee Lamb, and those are stacked with Dak Prescott. I think both of those have to hit at the price to really pay off. Pollard's probably my guy, and then DJ Chark as a cheap run back. If you can even call it that, I think he probably is sprinkled into other stacks, to be honest. But DJ Chark and Pollard are my highest owned in this game.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense here. And Snyder, I have to ask you: have we seen the end of Thielen being a wide receiver 1 this season? Are we well past that point? Is it the point of no return? Because I see, our guy Chris Ostro does a great job. Obviously, being in the chat every week. He always throws in these. Pollard, Thielen, mini stacks are dope. I'm just worried to go back to Thielen. Are you?
It's interesting that Rick's taken the play calling back, and he was the play caller when actually Adam Thielen was kind of busting out earlier in the year. So that's kind of interesting to take note of. I don't know if I can get there though. I think the time to target him was early in the season. He's an old vet. I think he's starting to tire down. I think I'll probably be off him. I'd rather play other guys at that price point.
Yeah, 7,500 is a bit rich. I'm with you guys, though. Finally going to buy in on their cash in on the Tony Pollard train this week. I bought in the previous 2 times over on FanDuel, and it hasn't been the greatest in the world, especially when you just overload the Cowboys offense, and all you just need is a fluke touchdown. When's the last time he scored? It's as good of a spot as ever for Pollard to get going here. And, Rico Dowdle being questionable will probably lead a little bit more opportunity to a guy like Deuce Vaughn behind him. I don't think it leads to more work for Pollard by any means, but we're due. And I almost feel like Mike McCarthy's the type of guy to feel bad for a guy if he hasn't scored in a while and kind of get Pollard a pity touchdown. Even though they got to the 1-yard line last week and they threw it and then they ran it again and they did not get it. And Pollard only had 1 bite of the cookie from inside the 5. So, I could be wrong, but this is, running back.
It'll be interesting to see, say, Pollard does smash or bust this week, what people will do next week on the Thanksgiving slate, too. That'd be interesting to see going forward.
That's a great point, Snyder. We are 5 days away from Thanksgiving, and we also have an entire slate of content, not just for NFL, but NBA, everything in between. And we have the code NBA15 that is rocking right now for 15% off your first payment. And you can get behind the paywall. You can see everything that the great Statsational does. We also have the playbook that Glaucoma does here for NFL action. Everything else is just awesome. We have F1 tonight, the 1 a.m. Las Vegas Grand Prix. I have a full playbook cores and projections up in the Saber as well. We got the PGA Golf the Showdown playbook, which Snyder has up too. So again, code NBA15, 15% off your first payment. We'll go ahead and dive into our third game, but this is a fun question. Is Pollard the biggest non-injury bust? Just talking about fantasy football this season. I would say if it's not Pollard, oh God, who is going top 5 this season? Justin Jefferson, obviously.
Bijan Robinson's right there with him.
God, man, Bijan for sure. I would definitely say Bijan. God, yeah, I think that's about it.
Pollard's probably it. You had Smiz put up like 100K. Rainmakers trade him, and he got Pollard, and he busts. So I mean, the stars align.
Rough break.
Perfect.
Yeah, people were pissed about that. It worked out in their favor, I think.
Yes, 100%. Then speaking of, another game here and another underwhelming situation for a running back potentially. Could it be James Conner or Devin Singletary in this one? It is the Cardinals and Texans. The Texans have been the DFS darlings over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, 2 weeks ago they were unknown. Last week they were chalk and did really well. And this week they get a smash spot against the Arizona Cardinals. You look at the Arizona Cardinals side of the ball, they have the highest owned piece on the entire slate, Trey McBride. On the Texans side of the ball, they have the second highest owned piece on the entire slate, Devin Singletary. Snyder, there's a lot of great plays in this one, and 5 guys projecting for over 20% ownership and 2 quarterbacks projecting for teens ownership, with 17% for Kyler and 14% for CJ Stroud. Some heavy ownership numbers just overall. What are you doing with this one?
Yeah, I absolutely love this game. This is 1 of 2 games that I'm going to try and just overly stack. Like in 20 maxes, I'll probably just run 20 builds of this team or 10 and 10 of the next game that I like. Going to be overweight on this. I really like Kyler Murray in this spot. I really like backing Kyler Murray from a betting aspect as he's an underdog. There's a lot of trends pointing towards Kyler as a dog versus when he's a favorite. Generally performs way better as a dog. So we get a 6-point underdog here with the Cardinals. I like them from a betting aspect and all things DFS here. I really like Kyler. I like Rondale Moore as well. 3,300. He's probably going to be quite popular. I think he'll be, 20% plus ownership on the slate here. So he makes sense. So I'm going to run a bunch of different like Kyler stacks. You got Trey McBride, who's going to be upwards of 40% in some of these contests too. He's just underpriced here, way underpriced here. He's a great play. I really like James Conner too to kind of get different. I would even run like a Kyler Conner like in the millie or something. That's a way to completely differentiate yourself. I think James Conner will be close to 10% ownership, and he's the guy they kind of lean on. I really like him to kind of finally bounce back. He played 41 of 65 snaps last week, 16 for 73 yards. I expect him to see a little bit of work in the passing game this week too. So I think James Conner is a great millie maker tournament play to kind of differentiate yourself in this tournament. And then looking at the Houston side, I think I'm going to be off of CJ this week, but I will be playing. I mean, Singletary is way underpriced. He's going to be upwards of 40% ownership too this week. Great matchup here, 5,300. And he's a good spot. I mean, he'll be like a cash lock. Dell will be like a near cash lock as well. They're both great plays there. Dalton Schultz is the guy. I've been playing Dalton Schultz about every week at the tight end position. He's getting up there now, 5K. Still will include him in the stacks and such. And then my play from this game, if you run like a Connor with Nico Collins stack, I think that's the way to just completely get different here. Collins is going to be back this week. It looks like he's going to be like, I could see him under 5% this week. I think Nico Collins is the million maker play on the Houston side that he's shown that upside. I mean, this is a great matchup for him. He's shown 30+ upside twice this year, and Noah Brown's going to be out. So I think Nico Collins smashes this week as well. So I really like Connor Collins from the lower ownership of this game, but I really like all the pieces in this game.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of pieces to like just individually. And Drew, is this a game where you can go ahead and just chalk in like 3 or 4 guys almost in most of your teams? Because the ownership is going to dictate a lot. But if this one ended up going under, you could have a lot of chalk bust. However, there's just a lot of underpriced guys. I mean, how extreme are you going and stacking this or even fading?
Yeah, I am probably – it depends on where the ownership shakes out. I'll probably match the field on a couple guys, but I'm going well over the field on Devin Singletary. I got 5 guys over 15%, and 3 of them are over 30% right now. So, yes, I'll be heavily invested in this game, mostly from the Houston side. But, yeah, Devin Singletary is number one. I'll be probably around 50% owned on Devin Singletary tomorrow at 5,300. Tank Dell, Trey McBride, again, just cheap and have a lot of upside. Tank Dell was kind of an underperformer last week. I was a little bit overweight and obviously didn't get there. But Houston offense has been obviously running pretty hot. So Tank Dell will be going right back to Trey McBride. A bit of a price increase from the last couple of weeks, but getting a lot of good volume and a lot of good targets in the red zone as well. So Trey McBride from a tight end perspective makes a lot of sense. CJ Stroud as well. Obviously, I want to kind of stack up the Houston side here. I have a little bit. So like some of the guys that Snyder mentioned, I do have them in the pool. And as of now, I have just a sprinkle, probably like in a handful of lineups. Nico Collins, James Conner, Kyler Murray. That's really it. But yeah, my big focus here is Devin Singletary. I'll be well overweight. He would be a first plug-in in any hand builds that I make. And then Tank Dell, Trey McBride as well. And that's pretty much it. But this is a fantastic game. I mean, I am not going to shy away from the chalk. I think chalk is, generally speaking, in the last couple of years in DFS has been directionally accurate. You'll see that time and time again, and everyone tilts on Twitter when the chalk hits, and it hits more times than not. So, yeah, I love this game. Houston side is probably where I'm at, and then Trey McBride is probably my favorite Arizona side.
Yeah, obviously Noah Brown missing out, but Nico Collins being in, you're going to see it kind of similar to what we have seen over the last 2 weeks in terms of target share for the Texans. And Tank Dell had 14 targets last week, and he even left for a brief time due to an injury against the Bengals there, and then he came back and crushed. But, in terms of opportunity, because he only had 6 for 56 and a touchdown, which ended up being fine. But, obviously we want 30 if we're trying to win $1 million. Trey McBride, I mean, now that he's the clear tight end number one, I mean, we were harping at this, early on in the season too. Once McBride takes over this tight end room, he's going to be fine for DFS, and the price just doesn't reflect the usage or, opportunity that he's going to get, especially in a chase script with an up-tempo team like the Texans. McBride, very good. I'm with you. We seemingly have attacked the Cardinals with running backs a lot this season. That's not going to change here either. I like what you said about Singletary, and I do think it's worth mentioning too. We have the flow chart up on site where you can see how these running backs perform against each team. And Devin Singletary is getting in just a good spot here as always. And his nuke game against the Bengals last week was not a fluke. I just worry about Singletary just in terms of the passing game because Stroud is such a good quarterback. He doesn't need to check down. His wide receivers are always open. So I just hope that means that Texans are out leading on the front foot. And I actually don't even mind pairing him with the Texans defense at 3K. It's not terrible at all to do just for correlation. If you're trying to get just a little bit underweight on this game, just going Singletary in the Texans D, I think that's a good chance to, still fade these, higher owned pieces for the Texans, but still get a piece of it. And maybe the Texans, kind of route them like 28-0 or something like that. You just fluke into a great script and, all the other chalk dies here. But I'm with you. How many times has the chalk hit this year? It seems it's hitting at just an insane rate. Why stop now?
Well, we don't see chalk like this very often either. So, when it's like this, it's really, I don't know. For me, it's kind of like you lean into it. You obviously get different elsewhere. You're not trying to just jam chalk everywhere. But, yeah, the fade all of the chalk is probably a mistake in this type of game.
Yeah, 100%. And I just looking at the slate here, too, I don't notice a ton of just value options off the rip that we just had, Snyder. But 3,300 for Rondale Moore with Kyler Murray there. Obviously, they use Rondale Moore a lot in the gadget game and stuff, and we'll get into it a little bit later. But 23% ownership. Are you over or underweight on Rondale Moore, Snyder?
I haven't built any teams. I usually don't build until Sunday morning when I see all the reports and everything come out, all the Schefter bombs and all that. I listen to the shows in the morning too. Help me get dialed in. AP, JT Hayes in that morning, and then Big T and JSU and Wiley in the second slot there. So I like to get their takes as well, but I'll probably be overweight on Rondale Moore. I'm a big Rondale Moore guy. I like the price tag. It's really going to help me fit in some of these stud receivers that I want to get overweight on this week too.
Yeah, 100%. That's perfect. And we'll go ahead and move on to the Titans and Jaguars. So the Titans here, and I also just wanted to revisit that bust thing. I would say the biggest bust out of the best ball teams in one of these drafts, Ramondre Stevenson's up there too. Calvin Ridley, that's the name I was looking for. Calvin Ridley has had 1 or 2 usable games this season. He was drafted a lot inside the second round too. He's been the biggest bust this season. I think Pollard and Ramondre are very, very close behind, though. I definitely think that. Well, after Zeke signed with New England, Ramondre dropped all the way to the third and fourth round. Anyways, I digress. We move on to the Titans and Jaguars. Obviously, the Titans have been a pass funnel for most teams. Whenever they match up, it's usually just been 40 attempts and hardly any rushes, right? So you get Trevor Lawrence here with two of his weapons in Christian Kirk. Obviously Christian Kirk's 14% owned, Evan Ingram 21% owned, which is very high for a tight end, but also the reason being he is super cheap at 4,300. Travis Etienne is 7,200. He's been an absolute stud this season for fantasy football, and 14% owned for him. Jaguars defense at 10%, and then it kind of drops off after that. Snyder, what are you doing with this one between the Titans and Jaguars? Seems like a one-way street just for Jacksonville this week.
Yeah, it kind of looks that way. You got the Jacksonville the passing attack should be good here against this pass funnel defense. I don't think I can get to Calvin Ridley, though. I think he'll probably be like maybe 10% owned or something like that, but I just can't get there. 5.4 for him is a great price tag, but man, it's like maybe he should have been playing ball like the last 2 years or whatever, but it's been a rough year for him, aside from that one good game that he had early, but probably won't get to Calvin Ridley. I do like Evan Ingram. I think he projects pretty well here. He was hitting on a lot of the sims too that I ran, so I'll probably be on him. He'll be a popular option too. I think just a lot of the best plays this week are going to be kind of in that 20% range, so I'll just look to get on him there. I mean, his targets have been just outstanding this year. I think he's got 7+ targets in every game this year. So I'll be throwing him in some teams. Christian Kirk is fine. I'm going to kind of be underweight on this game, though. Just kind of more like a one-offs because I'll be stacking a couple of these other games and just kind of adding in Evan Ingram. I don't want to play ETN against this defense. They're generally good against running backs. I'd rather play other guys in that price range. Really don't see much from me here. I could probably get on some Jacksonville defense probably at 3,400. If they hit my teams, that'd be fine. But it's kind of just a stay away from me here. I really don't see much from the Tennessee side either that I really want to like forcefully jam in there. I don't really have any conviction on any of those guys. They're going to be all lower owned guys. I tried to make Will Levis work on a team last week. That did not work. I won't be going back there.
You were pissed last week.
I played him on one of my 3 main teams. That was hurtful, but I think it's just Evan Ingram as a one-off for me in this game mainly.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the Will Levis thing. He burnt my hand, and I went away from Dobbs and Hawkinson after the fucking Ed Werder report, and
I went away from Hawkinson too.
Yeah, fell away from Dobbs and onto Levis. It was like one of those spike traps where you just hate. But yeah, obviously Evan Ingram here is a bottom 5 spot for tight ends in the league. If you're looking at the flow chart that Big T posts on his Twitter, but he is chalk this week. He is super cheap. Drew, what are you doing with Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk?
Yeah, Evan Ingram, I do like this spot. I'll be overweight on Evan Ingram. I do have a little bit of Calvin Ridley and Kirk, but overall this game is pretty light, to be honest. I lean all Jacksonville. That's the only side I'm really targeting. So obviously Ingram, Ridley, Kirk, a little bit of Trevor Lawrence. So I have a couple stacks, but it's pretty light. For me, I think Evan Ingram fits stacks and he fits one-offs as a good tight end target. The only Tennessee guy that I have in lineups with, I do have other Tennessee guys in the pool to work with, but is Hopkins. Hopkins gets a nice little price decrease, I think, down to 6,100 this week. So I have a sprinkle of him, but not much. Everything's on Ingram pretty much here.
Seeing some chatter about Derrick Henry in the chat. So obviously the divisional history, the Titans were, usually crushed the Jags. Obviously the Jags had a couple years of glory there, but the Titans have been pretty good in this division over the last decade for the most part. And Henry's been the running back for that team, for a large portion of his career, or his entire career, a large portion of that time, I should say. I don't know. On the road as a 7-point dog, he can get scripted out of it pretty easily. And that's the fear with Derrick Henry, is that if they go down, he might not get the ball. But this seems like a classic Titans game where it just goes under the total. And they are able to slow the game down. Vrabel does a great job at times doing that. And Derrick Henry, if he's getting 20 touches, he is projected for 2% ownership as things stand. I could buy into some Derrick Henry in that case, and it would be another situation where I just talked about Singletary, who's a great play. You don't have to pair the defense with him, right? But if you wanted to pair Derrick Henry with the Titans defense at 2,900 there, I definitely think that's a move that you could do. You're getting, two really low end pieces. Derrick Henry being a skill player is super underowned. I know Tyjae Spears stealing a lot of snaps and stuff, but Henry has touched the ball over 20 times in quite a few games already this season, and I don't think that's the worst tournament situation if you wanted to go that route. But I'm with you guys. Jaguars, in a pass funnel with their guys arguably underpriced. It's hard to get away from them and go to the Titans in this script. But again, we're trying to win $1 million. We're trying to get, at the end of the day, we're trying to win $1 million. Hopefully tomorrow, 7:30. One of us is a millionaire, and then we're talking about going to a nice steakhouse for that evening. But we don't get there just by playing the chalk. So we'll move on from that game. We have the next game. It's a banger here. I think the total is at 33 or 34. I can't tell. It's the Steelers and Browns, and it is as bad as it looks on paper. I cannot believe that the Browns are going to be favored in this one.
This should be a Thursday night game. This should be a Thursday night island game.
It should be. It should be. It would have been a lot better than
watching. It would fit in with all the others.
Oh God, watching Joey Burrow get hurt, man. I'm just done with football right now. I'm mentally checked out, just like his wrist. But you look at the Browns side. I can't imagine anyone's going to have interest in this game. There isn't any projected ownership above 5% except for one. It's the Steelers defense and Jerome Ford, which makes sense. I guess those two make sense. Steelers defense is at 3,500. The Browns defense is at 3,700. You got Jerome Ford is pretty cheap, but ultimately a terrible game, Snyder. What are you doing with this one?
Yeah, it's interesting. I like the Browns defense for sure, though. In this spot, Kenny Pickett's just not that good. I know the Browns defense is priced up there, but we've seen this Browns defense basically win games for them this year at times. They've put up 15-plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. They had that 23 spot against Arizona a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to get some Browns defense in my builds this week. Interested to see if I get to any of Thompson Robinson. He's priced at 4.5K. If he can somehow get like 70 yards rushing and maybe a rushing touchdown, I mean, that's going to be enough for you there at the price tag there. He looked all right against the Ravens earlier too. He was 19 for 36. He's got some rushing upside like we've seen in the preseason. He's definitely not a main team. Maybe I just hand build a couple of teams and throw it in the million maker or something. It's possible for him to rush for 70 yards and a touchdown, something like that. I know the total is really low in this spot. Really don't like any of the guys in this spot either. None of the skill position players really jump out at me. Other than maybe I will get to some Jerome Ford at 5.2. I think you could make the case to play him. 17 carries, 20 carries the last 2 games. He had over 100 yards rushing against the Ravens last week. So maybe I get to some Ford and pair that up with the Browns defense there for a little correlation there. I think that would be the main route for me in this game, would be more with the Browns defense.
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of running back and defense stacks, could be the route here. And wasn't it Jaylen Warren, who is now the starter in Pittsburgh, right? They said Jaylen Warren is going to get the bulk of the carries now for Pittsburgh. 5,100, not a terrible projection stuff. I can't imagine that you
I want to get your guys' gauge on this. It looks like Pat Freiermuth is going to be back this week at 2,500. I know the Browns have been one of the best teams against the tight end this year. It's definitely a terrible matchup for him, but I mean, he's got maybe a little upside at 2.5. Not sure if I'll get there though. Do you guys have any takes on Pat Freiermuth and his return?
My take is no, because he's got Kenny Pickett as his quarterback, and I like Freiermuth, but his targets have been down this season compared to last, right? He's got Deontay Johnson healthy, and even we had a couple games there where he didn't have Deontay Johnson. He didn't really do much. But I mean,
he still needs 20 points or something. Not 2,500 in the million.
2,500. If he gets you like 13, you're probably
but it's not good enough. At 2,500, it doesn't matter. You still need 20 points in the million maker.
It just depends on what the rest of your team does. Yeah, if that gets you like Tyreek, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and some of those guys, and they all go for 50. I mean, just depends. I mean, it's definitely a very thin play.
Either way, I think at 180K.
If he gets 15 and say Evan Ingram at chalk gets 20, you're sitting well.
Yeah, it's possible, depending on what you fit in. Yeah, I just think you're still looking for the same ceiling. Like, it's not so much a value play in the million maker as it is for cash.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a very thin play.
So like for me, I don't even know if anybody gets over 20 points in this entire game. So I'll make it easy for you, Greg. This is a cross-off game for me. I got no interest in any piece. I don't see even like the low ownership being appealing. Just seems like a low floor, low ceiling, rough game. Perfect. Pittsburgh never lets us down for bad games, which is very good. Like you don't give enough credit to bad teams, but Pittsburgh, even in good setups, is bad. In bad setups, man, they really underperform well.
Pittsburgh's been outgained in every single game this year.
I mean, I just kept jamming it in with the last year, I think, just over and over. I was like, why can't they do anything? And so I gave up, and I just watched it from the sidelines, and I feel great about it.
It's going to be a good one to watch from the sidelines. I imagine you might keep the defenses in your pool, and that's it. I would imagine.
I don't have any right now, but yeah, I mean, looking at it, defenses would make a little bit of sense. But to Snyder's point, you're paying more for a defense than a tight end. So I might not even do that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's move on. Let's get away from that terrible AFC rivalry game. We have the Chargers and the Packers. So this one here, there's a little bit of news. Keenan Allen's questionable. Jalen Guyton's questionable. You could have a very thin wide receiver room for the Chargers here. The main beneficiary would be Quentin Johnson in that case, and then Austin Eckler would probably get a small bump with Keenan Allen out. Two guys projecting for over 15% ownership. One of those is Aaron Jones at 21%. 6,200 has seen his workload, increase over the past couple of weeks, just like was it Matt LaFleur there, right? Just like LaFleur said. And then you had Austin Eckler, who is projected at 16%, who has absolutely crushed at times this season. This game I haven't really been able to figure out the Green Bay Packers, Snyder. I don't really know what I want to do with this one. Obviously, the Keenan Allen news is huge, so we definitely want to get that first before we, make too strong of an opinion. But you also get a weak secondary, one that just gave up 41 points to Jared Goff. And though I don't love the Packers, just overall, you can get some really cheap stacks here with a guy like Christian Watson who has a major upside. Jordan Love's only 5,600, Aaron Jones 6,200. Do you have any interest in stacking this, and who are your favorite pieces if so?
I don't think I'm going to stack this game, but I do really like one play in this game, like a lot. I think he's potentially the best play on the board this year that won't get any ownership really. It's Austin Eckler. I think he's the guy that could pop for 40 plus in this spot. I mean, we've seen the Packers defense give up 40 plus to the position twice this year. They've given up 25, 33, 29. I mean, this Packers rush defense has been terrible this year, especially the pass catching running backs too. So I think Austin Eckler is a great tournament play this week. I'm going to get well overweight on him. One of my favorite plays on the board this week. So I'm going to be up on him. And then another guy the Sims were just definitely a very, very high on was Aaron Jones. He landed on like the top 10 lineups that I ran in the Sims. So definitely need to look into Aaron Jones. There's some more. The box score isn't looking that pretty, but this is a great spot for him too. Great matchup for him. I'll probably be maybe even playing both of those running backs. It's kind of like a little corollary secondary stack type deal, but the price tag is great on Aaron Jones with the upside 6'2". I think he's a great play as well. Aaron Jones and then Austin Eckler are my favorite options in this. Not sure I can get to Watson. I just think Jordan Love is terrible, and Watson just hasn't been able to get the ball really. 7 targets last week, cut 2 for 21. I mean, he hasn't scored more than 7 points in the last 4 games. I just don't think I can get to Watson. Just mainly the 2 running backs here for me in this spot, I think.
Yeah, no, it makes sense here. I would say the case for Watson being made is the fact that his targets are trending up just slightly, right? It's not like overly impressive or anything, but if you're looking to buy low on a guy who has major boom upside, obviously he was a touchdown machine when Rodgers was there, but 7 targets, 2 targets, 8 targets, right? If you got 8 targets against this Chargers team, I think there's a case to be made. Drew, what are you doing with the Packers side of the ball? And, are you going to have a lot of Eckler if Keenan Allen were to miss?
Yeah, I would. I would also have a lot of Quentin Johnson. That would probably be the 2 biggest bumps for me. Quentin Johnson I'm going to have anyways. I think even if Keenan Allen's in at 4,200, he's been getting, 3, 4, 5 targets a game. Having some upside, or at least showing some opportunity for upside. So I do like Quentin Johnson a little bit. But yeah, for me, it's really Aaron Jones. He's probably like the primary piece from Green Bay. Keenan Allen, if he plays, I'll go right back to it. The dude is just a machine. The volume is there. I know we don't talk about A-dots. I don't really care about A-dots, but man, his depth of target is pretty good. So Keenan Allen will definitely be in play. But like I said, if he misses, Eckler gets a huge bump. Quentin Johnston becomes like the wide receiver 2, maybe. Technically for me, he'd be 1 from the Chargers side. But yeah, it's really it. I have a little bit of Jordan Love. I have a little bit of Herbert. I don't think I'm going to be stacking this game up much. It's really just going to be one-off pieces. And a little bit it's because it's expensive. Like Keenan Allen's expensive. Eckler's expensive. You can't really play them together. It's a little bit difficult. And if one goes off, the other one probably doesn't. So, yeah, for me, it's really just 3 guys: Aaron Jones, Keenan Allen, Eckler, and then Quentin Johnston is honorable mention.
Yeah, 100%. It looks like Keenan Allen is confident that he'll play. So I guess we can put that to bed just a little bit. But, yeah, I think 14 targets last week. 9K is extremely rich. But ultimately, I think I'm on the other side. I think I'm going to stack the Packers up just a tad. This Chargers secondary is really, really bad. And I just think that you gave up 41 to Goff, right? It wouldn't be out of the question to give up 3 or 4 touchdowns to the Packers at all by any means. And, that's what they're implied for right now is 21 points or whatever. I keep buying on Christian Watson. I chased the dragon in best ball. I'm going to chase the dragon during the season. He hasn't come through once for me, but hey, it's all about chasing it. And if you miss out on that chase, it just makes you even more digging deep into the darkness of your soul. We'll go ahead and move on to the Bears and Lions. So the Lions, like we just mentioned, fresh off a 41 piece, fresh off absolutely dominating on offense against the Chargers. And now they get the Chicago Bears defense, which is a little bit weak, right? This running game is definitely easy to kind of break up, right? So it's a two-way share. It's Jahmyr Gibbs, it's David Montgomery, both absolutely crushed last game. Both had pretty big days just overall. They're both priced up here, and neither one is projected for a ton of ownership, which is just slightly surprising to me. Jahmyr Gibbs is at 10%. David Montgomery is less than 1% as things stand right now. Cole Kmet is actually the top-owned player projected-wise at 14%, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is very, very close behind. Justin Fields is back. I kind of forgot to mention that. We don't have Tyson Bagent anymore. It's Justin Fields. What does that do to this offense, Snyder? And what are you doing? Are you going to be buying into this Bears offense, potentially clicking like we have seen in the past? And this Lions defense did just give up 38.
Yeah, I really like this. Is the other games that I really like to stack up this week. I'm going to be very heavyweight on both of the sides on this game. I'm going to stack it up as many ways as we can. We saw what DJ Moore did with Fields earlier this year. He had 30 and then 50 in those 2 back-to-back games. I think that's on the table here against this Lions secondary. Cole Kmet's a great play too at 4.1K. I think he's going to be a little lower than McBride and Ingram, so I think he's a great play in that range. He's got the upside. We've seen him pop off a few times this year as well. So heavy on those 3 guys. I don't see myself really getting to anyone else. It's just going to be a really narrow target tree there with Fields, Moore, and Kmet for me. And then going to the Detroit side, I've been playing St. Brown pretty much every week. Just going to keep jamming him in there. I think this is another spot. He's really not going to see that much ownership either, probably around maybe 15% or something. It's kind of ticked up a little bit over the last couple of days, so maybe it gets a little higher than that tomorrow morning, but really like St. Brown in this spot. It's tough to decipher which running back you want to play from Detroit. They're both great plays. You got Gibbs, and then you got Montgomery there too. They're both priced relatively the same. Gibbs is a little higher, and Montgomery gave that touchdown to Gibbs last week on the goal line there. Revenge game for Montgomery as well. So interesting there. I will play some golf with St. Brown. I'll mix in. I don't know if I'll mix in Jameson or not at 3-3. I mean, he's got the upside. He's just been so bad this year. I probably won't even do it. It'll probably just be the straight single sack there with Goff and St. Brown. Just get the workload there. And maybe even mix in a little Laporta there at 58. The price is up there a little bit, but he's got good upside as well. I think he'll be really low owned this week with all the 4K guys that everybody will be jamming in. So Laporta's a great large field tournament play. You could double it with Goff and St. Brown. But I really like this game from a spot that I think it could pop off and go for 55 points or something this week.
Yeah, 100%. We just saw it. What was it? 79 points, quick math, 41 last week. Drew, are you going to be as interested in potentially stacking this one up?
Yeah, I'll be stacking the Detroit side. So Amon-Ra St. Brown with Goff. I also like Reynolds on the Detroit side. I won't have much Laporte, I don't think, tomorrow. Haven't been super impressed. Like I think he's been like kind of capped at like 17 points, and he's just been hanging out there and under the last couple weeks. And I haven't really been super excited about how they've been using him. I think like I think he had a big game one of the first 4 weeks, and it was like, if you look through like the game logs, it was kind of like a fluky spot with 2 TDs out of nowhere. So for me, Goff with St. Brown and Josh Reynolds, I like quite a bit. From Chicago, DJ Moore. And I also will mention, I think VIP had a prize pick slip in there with DJ Moore over like 55 yards or 65 yards receiving yards. So I went ahead and threw a pick 'em in there with DJ Moore prop. And then I'm going to have a healthy sum of him, probably around 25%. So that's it for me, man. It's really just Detroit and then DJ Moore. And like I said, DJ Moore probably running it back and also single.
Yeah, 100% makes a lot of sense there. It is interesting, though, when you just kind of look at this team overall. We're kind of getting more and more murky with where the Lions' production is going to come from outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Because you have to guess on the running backs. Laporte has stepped up, and now he's 5.8K. Reynolds, 3.7. I think this is what made this team such a great tournament play last week, right? It was against the Chargers that, people only trusted Amon-Ra St. Brown. Gibbs wasn't chalked because Montgomery was coming back. He had a lot of moving parts. And, you kind of get that sense too, where, it's kind of a similar game where, the Bears getting Justin Fields back. You're not having a lot of people confident of like, how's he going to look and stuff. And, Justin Fields at times completely broke slates last year. And, it's under 7K. I don't hate it at all. I definitely think it's a good tournament game to kind of get overweight on. Hopefully it explodes just like the Chargers-Lions game last week. We have our last 1 p.m. game of the day, of the slate, I should say. On this one, we have 4 games left overall. And this one is the most interesting because how many times have we said over the last few, just over the first few weeks of the season, oh, yeah, we always got to jam in the Dolphins, right? Just jam in the Dolphins whenever they're on the slate. They're implied for over 30 points. And we get Tyreek Hill on the slate for the first time in, guess what, over a month. This is the first time the Dolphins are on a slate, a main DFS slate, since October 15th.
That's crazy. 4 weeks, right?
Yeah, we've gone 4 weeks, and everyone's forgetting how good the Miami Dolphins are, especially against the Las Vegas Raiders team, which, to their credit, have been a lot better over the last couple of weeks since Josh McDaniels got canned. But you're going to get Tyreek Hill under 20%, it says in the Millie. You're going to get Tua, under 5%. The running backs are just basically non-existent ownership-wise. Jalen Waddle, 2%. Are we buying into this Dolphins narrative against Snyder? Are we just going to take our advice that we said in the beginning of the season that, hey, if you're in the Millie, just make sure you always include a Dolphins player, at least one. I know, Drew, you mentioned that like last time. It just seems like
you include 4, but
yeah, it could be the move. And like a team applied over 30. Snyder,
I'm surprised by some of these projections. He's like not just the ownership, but like even the projections. Like it doesn't really add up for a 30-point total.
Not at all. Not at all. Snyder, what are you doing?
Yeah, the Dolphins are coming off that bad loss to the Chiefs. I think they're going to take it out on the Raiders here. I think the Dolphins are going to just absolutely annihilate these guys. I expect them to put up 40-plus points in this game. It'll just be interesting trying to find where we get the touchdowns from, though. I think they're going to use that bye week to kind of get Jalen Waddle going. I heard some coach speak about that. I know Waddle's going to be really popular over on FanDuel. His price is I think it's like 7K or 7-1 or something like that. So he'll be a very popular play over on FanDuel. I like him on DraftKings though as well. They kept this price tag at 7.6. You got Tyreek there as well. Both of these guys are liable to go for 35 plus any week they suited up. So I'm going to try and I don't think I'm going to stack this game up. I'm just going to try and fit pieces in to try and get the touchdowns. Because I'd rather play some of these other cheaper quarterbacks than 2 at 7.7. So I'm going to try and I'll have some Mostert on some teams. I'll have some Ashane on some teams. He's back this week. I'll have some Tyreek and then Waddle on some teams. I just try and with those other stacks that I'm going to run, I'm going to just try and fit some of these pieces in there and try and find the guy that's going to score 30 plus points this week because I think the Dolphins are going to wax these guys pretty bad. We've seen them beat bad teams at home this year. They hung 70 on the Dolphins. Raiders could be on the lookout for another 70 piece this week.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a big reason why they're kind of coming in slightly underowned, right, is the fact that A-Chain is back. And he's projected for 5% ownership right now. He was obviously the talk of the town when he was healthy, Drew. What are you doing with just Dolphins in general, and even touch upon this running back situation a little bit?
Oh, man, I'll be honest. I think I might have to scrap what I previously had for Miami. I'm just looking through like some of the projections across the industry, and they are widely varied right now. And right now, my exposure is really just on Tyreek Hill. Sabre has a pretty strong projection on him. But if you look down the board, like I just talked about, the projections don't really add up to the Miami 30-point team total. So I'm probably going to have to manually bump these guys up because I do want to have more exposure than just Tyreek Hill in this spot. As far as like the running backs go, it's just tough. I think obviously I'm not going to play them together. It's worked out in the past, but I'm not going to do that. But obviously including them in your pool, just make a rule not to play both. At least for me, I don't care to play both from one team, even if it had worked out in the past. But yeah, right now I just have a lot of Tyreek Hill. But the more I look at it, I just don't know why I wouldn't, logically speaking, and Sims are supposed to be smarter than me, but logically speaking, I don't know why I wouldn't want to have more exposure to this Miami side because the prices aren't crazy. I mean, they're all, a little bit elevated, but nothing crazy. Tua is probably the most egregiously expensive QB on the slate compared to some of the others. But like Tyreek Hill at 9,300 makes a ton of sense. Waddle at 7,600 makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm gonna have to bump up my exposures to Miami. So I don't know quite where I'll stand, but I do know I'll keep my Hill exposure at 30% or so and bump up the rest of the Miami offensive side.
I'm going to take it up one notch here, Drew. I think Tyreek Hill is borderline the best play on the slate. I don't think he's going to come in at as low owned as what Sabre's coming in at, right? 60.
I think he'll be at least 25% owned.
Yeah.
I think both are wrong. I think both ownership and projections are a little bit off right here.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I was going to rule him out of the play of the day section anyway, despite the sub 20% thing. But I just think, a guy who can just break the slate, coming in just on a Dolphins side that's implied for over 30. He's broken how many slates in a row now? He has the best floor on the slate by far. Yeah. It's not like he's like 10K or anything. He's 9,300. I know that we saw like a couple wide receivers to talk about who could really grab your interest a little bit later, but we haven't had a stud that just come out in these first 8 games who just said, oh yeah, he's the clear guy that you got to pick from, right? Tyreek Hill's that guy this week, and even Waddle, 2% on DraftKings, Snyder, is what Snyder. And like we said, I think that's low. We can probably 3 or 4x that, maybe probably closer to 10 than it is.
I think the Dolphins are a lock to score 6 touchdowns in this game almost.
God, we got to hammer that team total then.
6 touchdowns, let's go.
The fear obviously is that A-Chain reverts to his, what he was at the beginning of the season, steals all these touchdowns and stuff, and this is where people are probably scared, right? We're talking about how, we're trying to win $1 million, right? Drew, you got the experience there. You've won $1 million before, right?
Yeah.
If you
manually bump up the good scores, that's what you do.
Yeah. You pick the good score. You can't be afraid of bad floors, right? And I know that some of these Dolphins guys like A-Chain and Mostert are going to have shaky floors for their price. However, with the touchdown upside, just the upside of this Dolphins team in general, who are coming in underowned, in my opinion, I think I'm going to be overweight on this Dolphins team without a doubt. I just think it's just absurd not to be.
It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, 100%.
It's not going to be a kicker that scores 10 field goals. So
if it's Jason Sanders kicking a field goal every time, Mike McDaniel's great because he's such a good play caller and stuff. He doesn't screw us over with any like bad situations where it's just like 3rd and 8, we're going to run the ball and shit. Mike McDaniel always is just chucking it out to Tyreek Hill in space. So yeah, all up the Miami Dolphins this week. 3 more games left, and now we're into the 4:00 games here. The Bucs are in a must-win game for their playoff hopes almost, right? If they lose this one, their playoff hopes go down the drain a little bit. However, they're in San Francisco, a San Francisco team that has been slumping of late, but did get back on track last week. Snyder, we have Christian McCaffrey here. You were on him last week, and there's good reason to be on him this week at 23%. And the reason why that Tyreek Hill, I said I didn't have any studs that I really wanted to spend up for, in the previous games. Well, you have Christian McCaffrey here. And then you have Deebo Samuel, the only other guy projected for over 10% in this game. And Brock Purdy is still sub 6K, projected at 9%. How much do you like the 49ers here?
Yeah, last week we saw him kind of had that hard reset over the bye week and came out strong and just basically blew away the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think we see them kind of keep going up. I think they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. They're just going to get that second win here after the 3 straight losses going into the bye week. I think you could attack this from multiple areas here. Either I know Brock Purdy's going to be one of the most popular quarterbacks. Him and who's the other one that's going to be the top ones? I think Brock Purdy and like Kyler Murray and like Fields will be the top 3 highest owned guys this week. So Purdy will be 15%, which is not that much, but it's kind of high for a quarterbacks. But you can stack him up with either Debo or Ayuk. I would. This is another spot where Debo could kind of smash your under the radar. Nobody's going to play him. He's going to be probably under 5% owned here. Only had 4 for 30 last week. Ayuk didn't really have that good of a game either last week. He caught a touchdown, but it was only 3 for 55. So both of these guys can kind of pop off here as well. And then you always got McCaffrey there. He's at 9,300. He's got just as big of a ceiling as Tyreek does. So same price tag, I think. It'll be interesting to see how much goes to McCaffrey. I don't think he'll be that highly owned. I think he'll definitely be under 20% owned. So I'll be at least with the field there. I could see him coming in maybe at like 16, 17% owned this week or something like that, potentially. I think he could approach 20% in some contests, but I think he's a great play again. I do like some Rashard White. If I was going to bring it back with somebody, it would probably be White there. He's just been so consistent. 20 carries the last 2 games. He's still seeing the work in the passing game as well. Caught a passing touchdown last year, so White would probably be my preferred run back if I was going to run it back with someone. Always, like Big T says, you always got to have Mike Evans in the player pool. He's got that upside where he just pops a few times in the year. Last week, he put up 30. I mean, he's always liable to do that. So he's a guy you always got to keep in the pool, like Big T says.
Yeah, 100%. You got a few options in this game. Tampa Bay Bucks with a low implied team total, and with Vita Vea back, right? This run defense has been a little bit better. Has been way better. We saw the Texans were able to throw all over them. We saw the Titans try and throw all over them and couldn't with Levis. But you have Purdy here, right? Under 6K. Drew, you mentioned you kind of slandered Purdy last time out. You said, I never really have. And you're like, how the hell did he get to 24? Blah blah blah.
No, I thought he was a good real life quarterback. He was just a bad fantasy quarterback.
He just gets 20 every week somehow.
No slander.
I just heard slander. That's all I interpreted it as.
No, I said Snyder. No, I'll have a little bit of San Francisco stacks. To be honest, the guy that stands out the most to me is Ayuk. So Debo I'll have in the pool, but Ayuk at 7,200 will probably be a little bit higher owned for me. I don't have any Tampa Bay. I mean, they're projected for 5 field goals, so that's it for me. I'm not going to play any Tampa Bay. But you are right. I mean, Mike Evans does have a big ceiling, and theoretically, he's pretty cheap at 7,400 for his ceiling. I mean, he's probably comparable to like Keenan Allen as far as like ceiling goes. So, for me, it's really just similar to the last game a little bit. Like it's a 27-point team total. Obviously, McCaffrey owns the backfield, owns this entire offense for the most part. But you do want to have some exposure to this. I don't know if I can camp out at McCaffrey at 9,300. I feel like there's like the upside for Tyreek Hill. I just do think the upside is better for a guy like Tyreek Hill at the same price. So for me, it's really Ayuk and in a few stacks with Purdy and Debo Samuel.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. I'm kind of with agreement with you guys here. And I think we can move on to the next game here. It's a battle between New York teams. It's the New York Jets versus the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills fresh off firing their offensive coordinator, Dorsey. This is a game where I don't get excited about from any facet, right? You get a terrible spot for just the entire Bills offense in general, but especially the wide receivers with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed being absolutely amazing for the Jets. Devontae Adams, really tried really hard last week. He only got 14 or whatever with 14 targets or something like that. And yeah, it just doesn't feel like a very comfortable spot on either side of the ball because the other team has Zach Wilson as their quarterback. The only guy approaching above double-digit ownership is Breece Hall at 6,400, which makes a little bit of sense. And I really like this Jets defense this week, Snyder. 5% owned, very cheap, 2,600 for a punt against a Josh Allen-led team that is known for turning the ball over as well. How much interest do you have in this one?
Yeah, this is interesting. I do like the Jets defensive call there. We know how bad Josh Allen's been this year, and I think he's now turned the ball over more. I think he's throwing more interceptions or has more turnovers in games played in the NFL, which is pretty wild. He's got quite the streak going. I can't count that many. It's like 7 or 8 straight games with the interception. So the Jets defense, I mean, you got Sauce Gardner. I mean, he's one of the best in the league. He'll be blanketing Diggs here. Diggs 9-1. He'll be virtually 1% owned this week if you want to try and make that work. But I think I'm just going to be pretty much off of this game. Maybe I would play James Cook. I think he was ranking pretty high on Big T's flow chart. Could possibly get to him at 6-1. That's not a bad price tag. Breece Hall 6-4. Just haven't seen the ceiling on Breece Hall. I played him on the showdowns there. Really didn't get much out of him. Just 10 points the last 2 games. He does have the upside and the ceiling to get 25 plus. I just don't think I'm going to get there this week. I think this game's kind of a cross off for me. I do like the Jets defense, so at 2,600, I think that's a great play. But it's kind of an ugly game for me. I'm just going to get exposure elsewhere this week. But I do like the Jets defense there, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it makes sense. Drew, is this one where you're kind of just thinking about crossing off in general as well?
Definitely going to be lower exposed overall. So I do have a little bit of Jets defense interest. The one offensive player that I probably will pepper in a little bit is Khalil Shakir. Over the last 4 games or 5 games, he's gone 2 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets, 4 targets, 1 target, and he's 3,200. So if you want to punt off a piece for, some high upside as far as like a TD equity, he did have 15 points in week 8. So that's really it for me. Otherwise, this game is, to Snyder's point, a cross off. I do have some Jets defense, but it's just not that appealing of a game environment.
Yeah, 100%. I don't want to voluntarily attack, this Jets defense at all. I only do that when it's a showdown slate, when we're forced to do it. And they were able to shut down, the Chargers a couple weeks ago. It was the special teams and ultimately turnovers that did it. I mean, if Zach Wilson's turning the ball over, you might see points for the Buffalo Bills, but ultimately it's a gross game for fantasy. We're looking for good floors. And, with Dawson Knox sideline, we have seen the rise with Dalton Kincaid, which this probably has the best situation for this Bills offense going against this defense. Tight ends have performed at least decent against the Jets. And, 10% owned, 4,900. It's a little thin, but ultimately it's fine. And then on the Jets side of the ball, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, the 2 skill players that, again, make a little bit of sense. But no need to go overweight on this game. It's not even the best late game that we have. It is the main late game, but we do have one more, which has a lot of fantasy upside in it. It's the Seattle Seahawks versus the Los Angeles Rams. And if you're wondering, is Matthew Stafford back? Well, the answer is yes. Matthew Stafford is back this week. It's a big boost to Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and just this Rams offense in general. And then obviously on the Seahawks side of the ball is Tyler Lockett still questionable as well, I believe. So the Tyler Lockett news is going to matter quite a bit. It's truly a game time decision, I think, is the last thing that I read last night. His absence could really benefit a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba and DK Metcalf. Snyder, it's a late game. It's not the highest total, but I do have a lot of pieces here that I kind of like individually.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces that I can see myself getting to here. Stafford and the Rams passing attack was another one of those kind of stacks that was popping on the Sims that I ran. Puka was ranking out as one of the best receivers too in the Sims there that I ran for the Million Maker. 7-1 for him, probably like 10% owned. I really like Puka in this spot. I think this is a great spot for Puka and Kupp. I think it's cheap enough now that you can run that Stafford double there with Kupp and Puka. So I'm definitely going to have some of that on. I'm going to have that double on at least one of my 3 main teams, I think, as well. I really like that. I think this is a great spot for him against the Seattle defense. Puka is 7-1. Now, we were paying quite a bit more for him earlier in the season. He hit 8K there for a while, and he's dropped down 3 catches in the last 2 games, but he was money early in the season when Stafford was there, so I definitely like him. And then Kupp is very cheap on both sides, 8-1 on DraftKings, and I think he's like somewhere in the 8Ks on FanDuel as well. So great spot on both places there. I really like this passing attack. Tutu Atwell was another guy that was kind of popping in the Sims a little bit. So I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But on the Seattle side, I would love to just jam in Smith and Jigba again. I mean, we've been kind of talking him up all year. We had a couple of really good spots to target him. And then last week, he really didn't do as much with his targets there. But 16 points a couple weeks ago, I think we could see him approach 20 points in this game too. He'd be my preferred run back with that price tag of 4-3. So I really like this game more so from the Rams passing attack, but I like Smith and Jigba quite a bit as a run back.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something to monitor tonight too, is the Schefter report. See if you get any word on Tyler Lockett, because if Lockett's out, Jackson Smith and Jigba is one of the top value guys on the slate, right, Drew?
Yeah. I mean, he was already a pretty good value the last couple of weeks, so obviously that would give him a pretty big bump. I mean, I like a lot of pieces from this game. I'll probably be stacking up both sides. I think the Rams is a little bit more limited. I don't know how much I want to jam in with Stafford, but I'll definitely have some shots. But like Cooper Kupp at 8,100, Puka is still cheap. Darrell Henderson as well. So I'll have those three guys. And then like Seattle, I'll have Metcalf, Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker. I will not have Walker with my Geno Smith and Metcalf stacks, but I will have a good sum of Kenneth Walker. And then obviously if Lockett plays, I'll include him in the player pool as well. So this is a pretty good game to target for me. And obviously the last game of the slate, probably where the money's made as it was so last week, or I might be thinking of one of the NBA slates this week where like everybody sucked and the last game went off for like 160 total points, and if you didn't have 8 pieces of that, 8 of 9, you didn't make any money. So I think this is a really good game. I like both sides. Not necessarily going to run anything back. I haven't looked at the actual bills to see if they're actual run backs. They probably have a couple sprinkled in there, but I do like stacking this game up from both sides.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And like I said, Lockett news being the most important thing on this late set of games that I would say that's the most questionable. Arguably the largest piece of news that we don't really have, because Keenan Allen seems like he's pretty set to play. And if Lockett misses, changes the slate dynamic a little bit. You get a really nice, cheap wide receiver in a good spot. And, just for the flow chart that Big T tweeted out and stuff, we have it up on site. We also have it for different sports too. AP does it for NBA and all in between. And then this is a top 5 spot for wide receivers against this Seattle secondary. It sucks trying to pick which one's going to go off, Puka or Kupp. I think they both have 30 plus upside. And I definitely think, going a one-off or even I kind of want to get your take on this, Drew. Do you mind playing like Jackson Smith and Jigba with Cooper Kupp, for example?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
Like it doesn't have to be a full stack or anything, but it's kind of that mini stack, that mini correlation where obviously it's better with running back, wide receiver, running back on one team, wide receiver on the other team. But I know you mentioned this earlier this season too, Snyder. We also get the potential for the double stack between Puka and Kupp. I mean, it's a little, obviously a little aggressive, but it is 15.2K this week, for the double stack. And then with the Stafford involved, it goes up into 21. We have seen the Seahawks defense get absolutely exposed at times. I mean, I'm just trying to think from a tournament perspective, could that hit? And are you interested in that?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have that on some of the teams. Just looking at Seattle's log here against the defense, there's been they've definitely given up some big passing attack games. The Carolina Panthers back in September put up 68 as a position against them. So that's definitely the upside for the 30-30 there. The Bengals put up a good game against them too. The Lions, the Rams. Earlier this year, the Rams put up 52 from a position against this defense. So I think it's a little thin, but for the million maker, it could definitely take that down, though, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I can't let you guys go without getting your plays of the day, plays of the slate, I should say, for this 11-game NFL slate. Like I always say, we have one rule, and then you guys have actually been on a roll. And honestly, all props, Drew. You've been calling out Dak, and
just keep going back to the winner. You keep going back to the winner.
Dak again. I'll have to say I'll just click him next time. But yes, we have done. I've always had a good time on this, and no one over 20%. That's the one rule. Just for the sake of an example, we're not doing a Tyreek Hill this week, despite him being under 20% on the save percent projection. Tyreek Hill is the only guy I'll cross off underneath 20%. So Snyder, who is your play of the slate?
I really can't decide between the two guys, so I'm just going to give them both out. I think they're both two of my favorite tournament plays of the week. Austin Eckler and then Puka Nacua. I just can't decide between both of them, so I'll just give them both out. I think they both go for 30+ this week.
Perfect. I like it. You're going with the Los Angeles boys too. So 2 Los Angeles guys in one play of the slate. You gotta love it. Drew, who is your play of the slate? And feel free to take your time.
I mean, I could. I was gonna throw out one. It's gonna get ugly. No one will play him, which is fantastic for me. But DJ Moore is my play of the day.
Like it.
That's nice. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, I can give you some more. I like him, and I have a lot of them, and I think he'll do good. And no, I mean, honestly, we talked about him during the Chicago game, anyways. But obviously, being the number 1 target, and like I said, VIP had his prize pick slip in there, so I'm taking everything overs, all the overs I can find on DJ Moore tomorrow. I think he gets in the box twice, and has a big game, 5,600, cheap. And like I said, he's going to be sub 10%. I'm pretty confident of.
Thank you for stalling for me. I finally.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could have repeated it twice more if I needed to. That's it.
No, I hate giving a play of the day that won't make the main team or whatever. So I'm like 90% certain this guy's going to make the main team while everyone's hopping off the wagon. I'm going to hop back on. It's going to be a Dallas Cowboy. The Dallas Cowboys have been good for the play of the slate. It is Tony Pollard. He finally gets the box. We'll kind of get leverage off the situation there. The Carolina has been terrible against running backs this season. Pollard, gets into the box for once in his life. And we all go home happy. But yes, thank you guys for joining us and watching in. Like I said, feel free to hit the like and make sure to subscribe. NBA 15% off your first payment. And don't forget to have a happy Thanksgiving, since we won't see y'all until next week. And hope your Thursday slate is great next time out. And good luck in the rest of the season, and see you next week.